It is Super Tuesday over in the US. That name gives it the buzz of a sporting fixture or a reality TV event. But it is actually the biggest day of the season of US presidential primaries. Trump Day or Clinton Day or Super for someone else. Emily is there as votes are cast in Nashville, Tennessee. Emily.
Good evening from Nashville, Tennessee. This is the first time the state gets to vote in Super Tuesday, and the day has acquired a whole new level of significance. Why? Because this is the moment when we find out if Donald Trump is electorally unstoppable. For the past 6 months, the mainstream Republican Party have been careering somewhere between denial and anger at the idea of Donald Trump as the nominee. Right now, they are in crisis mode. It's very interesting to see the backlash against him growing, but really, the big guns may have left it too late to endorse their preferred candidate, Marco Rubio. It's a question that I put to a former presidential candidate. You'll see that in just a moment. But first, a breakdown of how those numbers tonight stack up. Held across 11 states and a territory, Super Tuesday spreads the election battleground across the country, from the Alaska caucus to American Samoa in the Pacific. You can see why it's a decisive day for candidates. Nearly half of all Republican delegates are up for grabs today, 595 in total. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders will compete for 865, almost a third of their total number. Going into Super Tuesday, Clinton's ahead with 546, Sanders trails on 87. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is on 82 delegates, Ted Cruz on 17, Marco Rubio one behind him on just 16. So Hillary Clinton is expected to win everywhere except Vermont. Bernie Sanders' home state, Oklahoma, is currently tied. As for Donald Trump, he's expected to win 10 out of 11 states, the exception being Ted Cruz's home state of Texas. Big numbers there. Now, in the beginning, we used to talk about Donald Trump attracting the angry voter, but as we've been travelling round, we sense it's a lot bigger than that. He seems to be getting the support of the suburban Republican, the college grad Republican, even, it seems, the people of faith. We begin tonight's piece in downtown Nashville. Nashville is to music what the Vatican is to prayer. A holy city of honky-tonk, country and western, and increasingly much more. It brings the believers out in force, and even on a Monday night, Layla's Bluegrass Inn gets them on the dance floor. The old hands, and yes, the absolute beginner. Mike's band has been playing Nashville for decades. Part of him mourns the changes he's seeing here. So when Trump appeared, or as another Nashville singer might put it, came in like a wrecking ball, the choice was easy.
I had a paint business for 25 years. It took me 25 years to build this company. And when the politicians decided to let Mexico get up and move to Tennessee and take my business from me, it felt like my government had their foot on my throat and reached down and snatched my paint business away from me and handed it to a bunch of illegal immigrants.
Mike has stressed to me his Christian beliefs. What's curious is that even here, deep in the Bible Belt, that sense of faith no longer dictates where the vote goes. In this small town of Sparta in Tennessee, we counted 16 churches just driving round the neighborhood. In other words, this is a part of the world with plenty of people of faith. Yet Donald Trump, 3 times married, criticised by the Pope for his non-Christian beliefs, leads the polls here by more than 10%. It's that kind of statistic that makes this race unfathomable. Over the border in Georgia, we join evangelicals to try and make sense of it all. It's a diverse congregation, ethnically and politically, and a preacher focused on Super Tuesday.
And I know in your minds, you're thinking, well, this candidate does that or that candidate does. It's not easy to find somebody. I'll tell you what it is easy to do, eliminate somebody.
Pastor Rouse won't name names, but you can detect who he might mean.
I think we're going to see this election play out, that it's possible a candidate will get elected purely because the whole group is angry at the other side. And then we get what we get.
If his message has urgency, it's because this is crunch time. With half the Republican delegates up for grabs today, this contest can turbo-propel whoever comes out on top towards the finish line. Super Tuesday is when the southern states of America come into their own. Places like this, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, with a strong evangelical blue-collar vote, might once have gone for Ted Cruz. But Trump is dominating here. More extraordinary than that, he's dominating with college graduates, with suburban Republicans, even with big earners. The classifications may be crude, but the big picture is clear. He's dominating across the board. Of course, the polling figures don't represent America, just a tiny Republican core who vote in primaries. But when you compare Trump to his nearest rivals, the difference is stark. The Republican Party machine is looking for salvation. They're currently grappling with what psychologists might call the 5 stages of grief. Somewhere between denial that Trump's going to win the nomination and acceptance that it's all going to end up like that comes the fight back. They want to know if he's stoppable and what the nuclear options are to end his chances. Thus a flurry of endorsements from the GOP's big guns in the last 72 hours for Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
The stakes are high.
Former presidential candidate Lamar Alexander and State Governor Bill Haslam have jetted into his rally to offer their backing. I asked them if it isn't all too late.
There's a lot of election ahead of us, okay? And obviously Marco is behind, but if you look at all those numbers, the longer people look at it, the more they're convinced he's the right answer.
And if he doesn't win any of the states on Super Tuesday?
Obviously the goal is to stay, in the game, and I think it's until I think you'll see Marco Rubio out there competing with everything he has, and I honestly think those delegates will fall in place.
Senator, you know what it's like to run for president. At this point in the race, does it feel like there is desperation setting in amidst the party?
No, if I were Marco Rubio, I would be encouraged because he's got the money to continue, and literally we're in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th game of the season.
The party's in a race against itself right now. Both Cruz and Rubio poll better against Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump does. Yet that doesn't seem to be a factor in where the primary vote is going. Comedian Jon Stewart is blindingly brilliant on the pitfalls of democracy. You have to remember one thing about the will of the people, he said. It wasn't that long ago we were all swept away by the Macarena. I doubt they'd recognise the Macarena here in Nashville, but whatever step they do make next will need some careful footwork. Try and work out what those next steps are. Join me now, Mark Winslow and the Senator Becky, Duncan, Massey, who are both hoping to be delegates if things go right for your respective candidates. Mark Winslow for Trump, Becky, you're for Marco Rubio. Do you think your man is unstoppable now, Mark?
Unstoppable, no. I think he's got a very good lead based on many of the policy positions he's put forward and the name ID he had coming in, but there will be a concerted effort to stop him before we get to the convention.
What do you make of this backlash? All the senators, all the governors starting to come out now for Rubio?
We're actually seeing some now coming out for Mr. Trump, but in terms of the ones that have opposed him, I think change is difficult, and a lot of people are afraid of the change that he might bring.
I described the mood in your party as kind of crisis mode, and certainly when we were speaking to Governor Haslam, when we were speaking to Senator Alexander yesterday, they sound like men in denial.
Well, I think the polls have been showing that Mr. Trump is leading and leading strong. I think as in any election, you have differing of opinions. It's you look at their policies, you look at their experience, you look at their faith, you look at their character, and that's where people go and make their decisions by.
What do you think the mainstream Republican Party, the bit that you support, should have done differently if they had wanted to stop Donald Trump when they could?
Well, I think having 17 people in the race at the beginning made a big difference. It was hard for people to coalesce around one candidate, and so I think the race would have been a lot different had there just been basically 2 front runners from the very beginning.
And this is democracy in action, obviously. This is, how the Republicans are voting in primaries. But when you look at the polls, which suggest that either Rubio or Cruz would do better against Hillary Clinton ultimately, doesn't it feel like you might be cutting off your nose to spite your face?
Well, it's a long way to November, and I think those polls can change as people have an opportunity to view the policy positions of each candidate, and we'll find out as we approach November when Republicans begin to coalesce around whoever the nominee ends up being.
Well, you say that they will coalesce. Are you confident of that? Do you think we're starting to hear those Republican voices now that say, if it's Trump, I might stay home?
I'm hopeful. I'll put it that way.
Go on, tell us what you're hearing.
No, I think what you are finding now is you're finding people like Governor Christie, Senator Sessions in Alabama, several members of Congress. We just yesterday had a member of Congress from Tennessee who have come out publicly supporting Mr. Trump in his campaign. So, as I said, change is hard and it's difficult for some people, but hopefully they'll come around and understand that we need to be united when we hit the election in November.
And if Marco Rubio, if Ted Cruz both do well tonight, when we get the results
Which I'm
through,
hopeful.
You're hopeful, that will basically secure Donald Trump for longer. The point you've made is that a wide field of candidates will ultimately help secure Donald Trump the nomination.
Well, it is narrowing down, and that's, there was 5 people in the last debate, and I think 2 of those will not get, you have to get 20% of the vote in Tennessee to get even some delegates, to get the proportional delegates. So I believe that at best there will only be 3 people that will get the delegates in Tennessee, and that will keep the candidacy alive.
Give us a sense then of what this means for Tennessee. We talked about this being the first time that Tennessee takes part in Super Tuesday broadly, and we've seen no real attack ads before this. Well, how does that change the dynamic?
By virtue of our placement on the primary calendar, we have not always had the number of ads that in Iowa, New Hampshire, of others have had. So you've had a lot of vote based on publicity for candidates coming out of those states that have done well. This time there have been some ads up, but it's not been nearly the amount of resources put into those early states.
Are you expecting Donald Trump, as I suggested, to win pretty much everything but Texas? And if so, what is the next move? What is the fancy footwork that the mainstream of the party want if they're still intent on stopping him? They could, of course, just accept the people's will.
Well, the good thing is in America you have one person, one vote. And so you go out and you work each state, each area, and there's people on the ground in every state. And I'm sure the candidacy will continue. Obviously, I'm strongly for Senator Rubio, and he's just a great candidate. He's a uniter, and I think they'll continue to work. And the more he gets out, the more. We had 2,000 people in Knoxville yesterday. We had 4,000 over here in Franklin, and the majority of those folks were young people. And it's just great to see young people taking a part in this, and we'll keep on working it.
Yesterday, Donald Trump was blaming his earpiece when he hadn't been able to explain why it had taken him so long to distance himself from the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Was that a moment of embarrassment for you as a potential delegate, as a supporter?
No, when you have a first-time candidate who doesn't have all the politically correct polish that lifetime or career politicians have, you're going to have a flub now and then.
You're joking
no,
now.
You're going
to have.
That
he's lacking the politically correct polish, and that's standing against him.
He has not been through the method of polishing the way other candidates have been, and he's not had the opportunity to be out there giving Senate floor speeches and being in the political arena for years. So you're going to, you take the speed bumps with the positive changes.
Let me ask you something more widely then. If you'd said, yes, I can accept the KKK endorsement, or I can accept David Duke, saying he'll vote for me, would that have, do you think, put people off, or not particularly?
Yeah, I do believe it would have. I don't know of any civilized person who believes that they represent anything positive.
I mean, that shows character, and if that's what his beliefs are, it would just really bother me.
Thank you
significantly.
Thank you both very much indeed. I guess that's the biggest question, the unanswered question in this whole race, how much Donald Trump means what he actually says and how far he would go to implement some of the more extreme policies that he's discussed. We will know the results from here at about 9 o'clock tonight. The polls shut in a couple of hours' time, and we'll bring you all the race, including what's happened in the Democratic race tomorrow.